welcome back to What the Hell Is This episode? In this one I'm going towards Doom, the Dwayne Johnson early starring vehicle Doom, a video game adaptation that spelled Doom for the potential for a sequel. It's one of those films that came out and was instantly hated by everybody. It was just like, I don't want this. I really don't want this. And I saw it in DVD when it came out, and then never gave a damn about it after that for years. I just had no interest in it. It was like, I hadn't played the games at that point. I played some of Doom, the new one, since then. That's a lot of fun. It's basically a shooting game with lots of rock and roll, and you're enjoying yourself immensely shooting all these monsters from hell. This film, on a rewatch, isn't as bad as Reputation. I was expecting a real shocker. I was looking forward to a real shocker with this one, and I didn't quite get it. But it is a very flawed film, and the big problem this film has is it's two films smashed into one. It really is. It's like, and they contradict each other all the time, and it's just... See, one film, the first half of the film wants to be a kind of alien thing type of movie where it's a slow build suspense, a bit of Predator in there, a bunch of military guys go to a situation where there's been something's going wrong in Mars, and in a scientific experiment they have to go and figure out what's going on, and they're getting picked off one by one, and they're going through sewers and through dark tunnels, and these weird mutating creatures that are well done effects are killing them off slowly but surely. It wants to be that movie, which is not what anyone from Doom wants from a film like this. People, when you want to play Doom, Doom was famously a shooter. Lots of action, lots of fighting, not suspense. But the film went for suspense this first bit, and then at some point people get scared, because every so often they would start adding in rock and roll music as they're going through the tunnels that absolutely killed any suspense. It killed the motivation, it killed pacing, it killed any suspense possible. Because you'd be doing the slow silent thing and suddenly... And it's like, okay, well, I'm no longer have any sense of fear. No matter how many effects you put on this, you've killed any suspense. And the film keeps doing that, because it's starting to get to the second half of the movie where they actually start shooting these monsters a bit more en masse. Where Dwayne Johnson gets his big gun, where people start to get infected and go crazy, and you're basically waiting for the big fight between the two heroes at the end. And that's the kind of movie people wanted, but it's not enough of it, really. So it's a perfect example of them making a film that did not satisfy the fans because it did not give you enough of what you wanted when you went in. And it also meant, because you're impatient waiting for that film, you can ignore the virtues of what was already there. So what originally you had for the first half of the film is a fairly generic but enjoyable suspenser, basically set in Mars, where basically Dwayne Johnson and Karl are basically going to Mars with this troop of rapid response troop. Like, Dwayne Johnson's in charge, Karl is his second command. He had a traumatic experience on Mars years ago. So Dwayne Johnson said, just don't come, just stay at home. But because his sister's there, like Karl's sister's there, he has to go, he feels he has to go. Even though they haven't been talking for a while. His sister's played by Rosamund Pike. And and the rest of the team are all generic actors, like character actors, who are there to be like fodder for the monster, basically. They're not as in... There is basically a Predator clone situation where the jokes aren't as good, the characters aren't as well defined, but they're okay for what they are. They're just mediocre. I mean, they're not... There's some jokes that are very annoying early on, but it kind of calms down after they get to Mars to not be like one-liners every 2 seconds. But, I mean, the big problem is they're doing this slow suspense thing and then intercutting with rock music every so often, and having to make sure you have the Rock saying some funny things once in a while that kind of goes against what the rest of the film was trying to be at that point. It just is like... It's just a total whiplash that doesn't work. The big thing this film has now, it did not have at its release, is the fact that on release, this was a Dwayne Johnson rock movie. He was a rock, based on the rock then, not on Dwayne Johnson. He was established himself away from wrestling, but he wasn't established star by that point. They also bring Karl Urban in and Rosamund Pike, who were not established either. They'd both been in films. Like Rosamund Pike had been in a Bond film. Karl Urban had been in Lord of the Rings and a Bourne film as a villain. But in Lord of the Rings, his most famous part, he was in a blonde wig. So they were not established as like lead actors either. They were. It was a thing was the film was in a budget, so they hired people who they could afford, who were on the way up, and are hoping that would help them. These new upcoming stars of these big blockbuster films, and they're hoping that would sell it. But they did not have any iconography at that point. They're just these two actors who were viewed as professional actors. There was not an affection for them by the viewer. There was some affection for Dwayne Johnson at this point, but not that much yet. It was still like, there was potential there, but let's see what happens with him. Nowadays, when you look at the film, Dwayne Johnson's a much bigger figure, but so are the other two actors. I mean, Karl Urban played Dredd. Dredd's one of the great iconic badass characters of the 2000s. Of this new century, basically. I mean, him and John Wick, those are the two like badass characters in cinema since the start of the century, really. So he was in The Boys, he's been in Star Trek, he's been in a lot of stuff, he's been in Thor. He's a well-known character actor, he's played some really strong characters. So you get into the film now watching it, it's Karl Urban, who's a much bigger actor. He's like a well-known actor now. He's a thing who can go face to face with Dwayne Johnson quite easily. It's not an issue. Not just as an actor, but also as a screen icon, in a sense of he's a different kind of actor. He's more of a character actor who's done some badass parts, some tough guy parts. And Dwayne Johnson's much more of a guy who does big corporate blockbusters. But they're both comparable in a sense of both can be physical in films and be plausible. So before, when the film first came out, it was this guy you didn't really know versus Dwayne Johnson. How could he win? Now it's much more two characters can really go against each other in an interesting way. And since then, also, Rosamund Pike has become a big actress who's been in a lot of respected films. Here she was an actress playing this part, getting all the exposition, and having to keep a straight face through some of it. Because she gets all the bad stuff to see. All the dodgy dialogue, she gets it. But now she's a well-known actress, and she's a much more weight as an actress, as a screen personality. So you notice them more now. So the scenes you had before them, they're just these actors you didn't really know that well. Now you've got a bit more relationship with the actors in the sense of you know them, you've seen a lot of their work, which you didn't before. So that actually means that the build-up scenes actually play better now because you've just got more emotional investment in the actors through their other work. So that kind of works a lot better. That really helps the film a lot because you're behind the two actors who are playing sympathetic characters a lot more than you were at the time. And because this is a very kind of sketchily written film, it's not a film of high depth character work. That kind of weight they bring to it now, from the work we've seen since then, helps a lot. So that when we go to the end, when it's Karl Urban versus Dwayne Johnson, it feels more like a fight than it would be before, even though it's way over the top, it still feels more like a fight. And when basically you have the sequence where Karl Urban actually has the adrenaline shot and does the Doom thing where he goes through and just murders all these monsters in first person view, it feels much stronger than it did at the time because you know the actor more now than you did then. It's not just this anonymous actor who you're meant to know but don't really. You know, it just is that kind of accumulation of the character feels stronger just because who's playing him. Like if Karl Urban disappeared after this film, you'd still think, what the hell is this? It's just that thing you get in films. There's some people who go on to do good stuff, you see the earlier films. they're just elevated more just by who the person is. So the film kind of works better there. But what it doesn't work still is this kind of mishmash of these two elements. Because one, they do not have the budget to do the Doom film you want to see with the thing that you're kind of promised with Dwayne Johnson in this film is he's going to go mental and murder hundreds of monsters, which you do not get. By the time he goes mental, he's been turned into the bad guy, which is the twist of the film, but it means you don't get to see the thing you paid for in the film. So the first time you see it, you're going to think, that's terrible. Why do they not do the one thing we all want to see? Now, because I've seen the film already, I know you're not going to see that. So I'm going to see the film for what it is. But it's still unsatisfying that way in the sense that you want to see more gore and more monster killing in the second half of the film, which you don't really get. You get one sequence and then a fight to the death between Karl and Dwayne Johnson. So it's not big enough for what the film needed. But now, watching it again after knowing that, it's not as bad as it felt at the time, because it just feels like, okay, that's all they could afford. So the film they could afford was a lower budget film, which if they'd stuck to it, would have just have been probably a more satisfying film generally to look back on. But they did have the temptation, they had to have the rock music, they had to have that kind of stuff in the second half to make it more of what the fans wanted from the video game. So either they should have put more money into it to start, or just said, look, this is the first film, this is a build-up film to what will follow. It should have been one or the other. It could not be both. It was one of those compromise films that try to do both things at once, and it was like, we don't need to see both, we want to see one or the other. It can't do both. But I actually quite enjoyed this film. It's not great, but I had some fun with it. It was like, it was better than I remembered it being. Mainly for the reasons I said, because of, the actors better now from other films. And it is a fun little generic action horror film. It's not an amazing one, but it's not bad either. I've seen a lot worse. So, but it did do the cardinal sin of a film is it did not deliver the one scene you paid to see. The one scene that you want to see Dwayne Johnson in a film called Doom. The one thing you want to see, especially they give him the BFG gun, and he uses it for a couple of things, but doesn't really use it. And it's like, oh, God, I feel cheated. So that's the big problem with the film, ultimately. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's not as scary as I expected it to be, actually, because I planned to do this video and I thought, oh, this is going to be a corker. This one's going to be a disaster film. So I'll have a lot of fun with it. And I was like, it's actually better than expected, better than I remembered. So it's kind of disappointing in that way. But there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with some more. That's me for now.